Hello and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. It's a frontline update for the Ukraine war on the 4th of December 2022. Let's have a look at what's happened overnight. Well, not a lot really, fairly quiet night. We are still awaiting this big saturation missile attack from the Russians. I've been talking about how this is an indication that they are running low on ordnance, that they're running low on cruise missiles and other types of missiles and Shahed 136 drones, for example. And that's why there's this gap. They have to wait to get those in from different places around the world, actually, from ships, from bases, different ends of the Russian map. And when they get them in, they fire them off, and then they have to wait again. And this is because they just don't have the large amounts of stocks sitting in warehouses for them to use. Other people are saying, well, no, they're just waiting for Ukraine to build up their infrastructure again before they take it down. I completely disagree. I'll give you some further evidence to why I think that is the case in my extra video later. But otherwise, let's move on. Okay, let's look at the figures from Ukraine's point of view in terms of Russian losses yesterday. 550 personnel, 5 tanks, 6 APCs, 1 aircraft. Actually, it seems like we are clear now what aircraft that is. I'll come to that in a second. So here we go. 5 tanks, 6 APCs, 2 artillery systems, 1 aircraft, 1 drone, and 7 vehicles and fuel tanks. This is actually a really key number. I talked to you about logistics yesterday in my extra video, and they're having to pull on like 1967 fuel trucks, which shows you that is a real problem. And we've been seeing these fuel depots being blown up both within Russia and back behind occupied territory sort of lines in Shakhtarsk and other places. And someone rightfully said yesterday that it's not just that fuel is burnt up and lost, and that's obviously a huge loss. They can't use that fuel in their vehicles, but actually the containers are destroyed as well. So when they hit railway carriages which are full of fuel and blow them up, those carriages now can't be used. When they take out a fuel depot, that depot is done. That depot now can't be filled up with fuel. So yes, they've lost that fuel, but they also don't have a storage place for a massive amount of fuel for their vehicles. And that causes a further headache. They now have to either build another one or find some other way of storing or place of storing that fuel. So it's really important. It's a great point. Thank you. This is an interesting map. It's another subject for my preamble here is that map of Russian air activity from the last few months reveals one of the reasons the war has developed as it has and why Russian military power was so overestimated before February 24th. If you look at the map of where Russian aircraft are located. Now, these aren't all aircraft. These are just sort of, visible from free satellite imagery. But when it has been compiled together, you can see that the activity for the Russian aircraft are well behind enemy lines. And that's because they haven't done the suppression of enemy air defense activities, the seed activities that you should do before a war really starts, before your ground troops get on the ground in any area. You need to make sure you've got air supremacy, and you make sure you've got air supremacy by taking out air defense systems. Russia didn't do that, and the West has been helping to provide air defense systems, and so therefore they don't have air superiority, let alone air supremacy, and so therefore their jets and their helicopters are flying way behind the lines, often within Russia or over the Black Sea, and out of range of a lot of the air defense, and therefore they are less effective. And when they do come into range, this sort of thing happens. So yesterday, an S-34 was struck down near Bilohorivka near Bakhmut, and that's not good. I don't know whether the pilot survived, but it's not just about the loss of the aeroplane, it's a loss of the pilot as well. Okay, a few strikes. So Russia yesterday was striking Kramatorsk in the Donetsk Oblast, and there was a big fire that broke out in the area. So that wasn't good news. Kramatorsk is here. You might remember it some months back where the Russians sent a missile they were claiming to be aiming at a military target, but with his circle error probable, it ended up going into a whole crowd of people trying to get on a train to evacuate from Kramatorsk. and it killed a large number of people there. Well, anyway, that's Kramatorsk. That was hit yesterday. There have been lots of strikes behind the Russian lines. In terms of HIMARS, speaking of HIMARS, they are very busy. Starobilsk was hit yesterday, but places, all up and down. Zaporizhia is a favorite oblast to be targeted at the moment by HIMARS, and an awful lot of troop deaths and wounded have been reported in the area. But certainly Starobilsk, where 30 servicemen and 14 were wounded and 14 killed. Artillery fire damage to an enemy concentration. Another case of Russia on fire again. The Iranovsky car market is on fire in St. Petersburg. Actually ended up being a 500 square meter fire, and the whole place sort of collapsed and whatnot. So that was pretty major. Again, was that an accident? Who knows? Is it sabotage? Who knows? But it happens quite a lot at the moment. And we have partisan activity behind the lines. So this is in Luhansk, taking out near thermoelectric power plant, automated railway control. So until it's repaired, it would switch the railway section to manual control, delaying military cargo delivery. So these sort of things are really useful, considering the Russians are predominantly a railway-based army. Anyway, let's go on to front lines. That's enough preamble. As ever, we're going to start in the northeast from the Kupiansk-Svatove-Kreminna front line. So this is Kupiansk-Svatove is where I'm going to look at, is the area I'm going to look at on my map. Here, there have been some HIMARS attacks in Svatove, HIMARS attacks in Novochervone, which is northeast of Svatove here. The news is mixed around here. Well, Kupiansk is the place where the Ukrainians were trying to take some days back. They had some success in Novosibirsk to its west. However, they were repelled in Kupiansk and in fact have lost ground in Novosibirsk. There were some claims yesterday that Ukraine had actually taken both those places again. And then counterclaims, or at least NOAA report says we have to withdraw the possibility that the Ukrainians captured parts of Kupiansk based on footage that appeared to be inside the city. It's not. Novosibirsk is contested. So I'm leaving that exactly how I have it there. Novosibirsk, being this settlement, is still contested. That's a really important settlement, a bit of a key towards being able to encircle Svatove. But if we go further north of there, just south of Persia Travneve, there is this advance in the Yahidny area. Some talk about advances eastwards by the Ukrainians. And in fact, we might be able to change our lines a little bit. So it seems like the Ukrainians are advancing towards Novotarasivka, and that Yahidny does seem to be under their control. I wasn't 100% sure. Kislivka sort of forces moving out eastwards from Kislivka. So that's good news for the Ukrainians there. But most of the news on this front line is coming from the Chervono-Pavlivka area, which is further down south. So if we sort of zoom out, we've got the Krasna River coming down here, the P66 highway from Svatove south. This is this important highway that the Ukrainians want to control, and indeed it appears they do have fire control. Some of the Russian mill bloggers are saying that, broadly speaking, it's going to be around here, the Chervono-Pavlivka. They've got fire control over the P66 highway there, and may have even breached it in places. Zitlivka as well is a town that the Ukrainians appear to be on the doorstep. They are in the outskirts of Chervono-Pavlivka. Some Russian mill bloggers saying that the Russians repelled the Ukrainians in the town itself, so that it is a grey zone. They're fighting over that, and as ever, these other settlements around there are under pressure. What do some of the sources say? The battles around Chervono-Pavlivka continue. The highway is a grey zone covered by artillery. Chervono-Pavlivka partly under the Ukrainian control after yesterday's General Staff report stated that the city had been shelled by Russian troops. Russian sources today state that the city has been partially taken and the highway is a grey zone. and the Ukrainians also pushed close to Zitlivka. Again, they captured at least half of Chervono-Pavlivka. Fighting is ongoing on the highway on the outskirts of Zitlivka, so it's slightly further on, slightly more recent. And it's this last one that I find interesting. It's confirmed that the Ukrainian has presence around the P66 near Holikove, and there are developments towards Krasnyrachensky, Winky Motorcon there. Now, let's just mention this a little bit. So, Krasnyrachensky is this settlement. I don't know if you remember a couple of months ago I don't know. Oh, goodness me, time flies. After the lightning attack to the east took place and the Ukrainians got this far, they actually, the one place they breached both the P66 highway and the Krasny River was at Krasnyrachensky here. But they since sort of lost it, and then there was all this fighting back around this river back here. So it's really interesting that now there is some development around there. We've got Horikovo there and Zitlivka around here as well. So there is good news for the Ukrainians around this whole area. Russians admitting it's pretty difficult, and indeed. Good news around the forested area as well, that the Ukrainians are perhaps just 2 kilometers from Kreminna around here. There's a T-90M tank, so one of the most recent Russian tanks was captured in this forested area. And then we get on towards Bilohorivka. So there's one bit of footage that I want to show you from around Bilohorivka. Just to the south of Bilohorivka, there's a place called Zolotorivka, and that is under pressure from Ukrainian artillery. And there's been some geolocated footage to just here. I've tagged it as Mystery Van. This is the video that's going around a lot at the moment. I'm going to show it to you because it's fairly interesting. So there's the Scooby-Doo Mystery Van here, just unloading some stuff. They're unloading some I think ammunition from this truck as well, and then they come under artillery attack, and I think all the Russians then run inside to hide as artillery going off here before it gets closer and closer. Then they hide away in a building, I believe, and then the truck gets sort of hit or the ammunition starts going off, and I'm not exactly sure what goes on here. I don't know whether this guy actually gets it. I mean, he must get in the truck and drive it away so that this all doesn't blow up next to the house. Maybe, I don't know. You can see it's got flat tires already there. I'm not really sure whether he really does decide to get in the vehicle and drive off. But the next thing we see, unfortunately, there's some cuts here. The white vehicle's been driven away a bit, and then there's a big explosion, and the truck starts moving. So lots of people are talking about how there's like a ghost rider, but it could be that the guy has got into that truck and has started to drive it off. But the cabin is completely on fire. So I can't imagine that someone is in there presently. I just don't know what's going on or whether this is downhill there. But it's pretty incredible footage. But that truck just continues on going until it can no more. And if there is a driver inside there, he is clearly not going to be in a good state. And the other sort of mystery, I'm most sad about the mystery van taking one for the team there, so Scooby-Doo won't be able to solve any crimes and pull off any other masks. But yeah, there's that. It's really interesting when you see that and you trying to work out what's going on, and then you look at sort of Rybar and their version of what happens there. Is the Ukrainians caught our fighters loading ammo and opened artillery fire on them. Ours quickly hid inside a nearby house, but the Ural truck full of explosives caught fire. One soldier, despite the risk, got inside the burning truck and drove it away from his buddies. So here they have him. But you can see it's cut. There's only, there's another 10 seconds there. You don't see any of this, and you just see that going down. And it's the claim that he got inside there, but actually he got inside the white van, I'm sure. So, this is, I'm not sure he did do that. If the explosives in the truck had detonated, our fighters would have died. For his heroic undertaking, the fighter deserves the highest award. But that is cut. That is like, I'm rather dubious that the guy actually got inside that truck and drove it off, because it was already properly burning, and it's this white truck that he got in and drove it off to there, and then that had a massive explosion itself. Anyway, there you go. So that's near Bilohorivka. So there's lots of fighting going on around there. We come down near Spirne. Apparently, the Ukrainians, according to Russian military bloggers, the Ukrainians tried a big counterattack near Spirne and lost a whole load of troops. Don't know whether that's true. That's from the Russians' point of view. We shall see. But there's certainly, the Russians have been making some ground over here in the last few days, and a counterattack you would expect around there. And then we come down to the Bakhmut area. There are some. Okay, where do we start? Well, Ukrainians are really heavily reinforcing Bakhmut, apparently. But at the same time, some things are not looking good around that area, particularly concerning the town of Pidorodny. So this is near where the Russian jet was downed. Now, apparently, varying claims. Some Russians are claiming that Pidorodny has been captured, which would mean their lines would go something like that. And if that's the case, they would have fire control over the main supply routes into Bakhmut. That will be a real problem. Other claims are that they have entered into Pidorodny, and that the town is contested. But even if it's contested, this is quite an important advance from the Russians. If they are controlling at least part of Pidorodny, this, the pro-Russian sources are saying, well, this is the end of Bakhmut. Bakhmut will now, all the defenses will start crumbling. I don't think it's remotely that bad. Ukrainians maintaining control over Bakhmut is not contingent upon Ukrainians controlling Pidorodny. However, it is important they do continue to control Pidorodny because of this road that comes down here and from the north into Bakhmut. That is bad news for the Ukrainians, certainly. On the flip side, there apparently fierce fighting still in Opitny, so it's not all doom and gloom there. That the Russians haven't taken Opitny yet. Just to add that here's a bit of footage, apparently in Opitny itself, showing Ukrainians are still fighting there, and it is still contested rather than being fully under Russian control. So just a little bit of evidence. Of course, I can't really do any geolocation to that footage, so I'm assuming it is what it claims it to be. Defending Opitny and Bakhmut. Let's see a bit of footage concerning Bakhmut. Again, it's important to give yourself a sense of what the place is, and you can see the apocalyptic nature of the whole area here. And this is a bridge that's still operational going into Bakhmut at some place. And here we have a bit of footage that I think it's worth showing you again to see the sort of fighting that's going on around Bakhmut. So here we see just some troops, and then it cuts to an explosion. I think those troops weren't there, but weren't at that point. But what I want to show you is the nature of this area. I think I've geolocated this, and the amount of artillery attacks that's going on here, and then troops apparently, trying to get across here to do their maneuvers and whatnot. You've got some kind of smoldering area here, but it's just pretty desolate and really difficult. So if you're, the point of me showing you this is, if you are Russians trying to get towards the Ukrainian positions, you are in plain sight for an awful long time, and you're just easy picking for Ukrainian artillery. So I think you've got a long straight road there. You've got some big aggregate heaps in the back there, and some kind of, I don't know what that was, some kind of rubbish heap or something there. I think this is this long road here. You've got the aggregate heaps at the back. So this is where you've got the drone sitting basically here, I think just above this waste sorting plant, which was the Russians apparently took control of some time ago. I've not heard anything about it since. And I think this is that smouldering heap, that rubbish heap, and the footage of the artillery was there. The point being that if they are trying to attack, do this frontal assault into Bakhmut, you've got to cross this terrain where it is just killing fields. Yeah, you can hide behind here, but to actually make advances, you're just going to be ripe for the picking. Anywhere around here, you're just an easy target for the Ukrainian artillery. Anyway, I just thought that would be of interest to show you. There's been an interview with someone in Bakhmut that's saying that the Russians have changed their tactics. Previously, they had artillery superiority, and this was killing the Ukrainian morale. Now we can see how our artillery works. We can see how Russians' positions is destroying Russian positions, and this is radically increasing our morale. I can see the same also about the neighboring units. Due to this, the Russians have changed their tactics. First, they send mobilized conscripts without any experience and combat value. We are defeating them, but then the Wagnerites or other elite units come up who already know our positions, because obviously there's been fighting, and the mobilized troops are being sent in as cannon fodder, but providing information and firing points and are trying to suppress us. In such a battle, the one who outwits the enemy wins. They can no longer rely on their artillery. Russians are equipped with old things, a vest and a pea coat on it. Unlike them, Ukrainians put on thermal underwear, 2 or 3 layers, and on top that stop the wind and the water. So a bunch of different things there. The translation is obviously a bit dodgy, but the idea is that they are sending in these conscripts, as you can see from that footage before, just people being sent across like open ground, being taken out. But in other areas, maybe Kupiansk, where the conscripts are being sent in, mobilized troops, they're cannon fodder, but it softens up the enemy and finds out intel, and then the Wagnerites sort of move in there with their more elite troops. Noel report says no map changes. Ukrainian reinforcements has arrived in Bakhmut, including the Special Honor Guard Battalion. In Kupiansk, the Ukrainians have counterattacked. Russia still controls most of the town, but fighting is ongoing. So there you go. As far as Bilohorivka, there's so much information from pro-Russian sources. This is just, if you put in the search value of Bilohorivka, they're all saying things like, if you translate a lot of these, what's really interesting is when you see some of these in different languages and you translate them, it turns out it's the same text, just in lots of different sources. So it's kind of Russian bots and whatnot. And yeah, they're all claiming doom and gloom for Ukraine around Bakhmut. I doubt it is, but we shall see. Okay, so going back to the map, Opitny, down to Kupiansk. So there are counterattacks around here. I've changed my mapping to reflect that there's just a lot of grey zone here, and the Russians. So it's accurate with the Russians, I think. What the Ukrainians control, I'm doing it more on the Russian fronts here. Ukraine, there'll just be a lot of grey zone and a lot of hard fighting. So yeah, it's going to be all about Kupiansk again, but tough fighting, and that'll be that whole area will be one to look out for over the coming day or two. Okay, let's now head down to Avdivka. Just before I do get to Avdivka, actually, I just want to say that there have been some HIMARS hits around the Luhansk Oblast. So this is Bakhmut, where we just were. If we go sort of 70 kilometers east of there, we've got Koroshe here that was hit, and I think maybe Troitsky as well, by HIMARS. So there's lots of activity with HIMARS going on behind the scenes and behind the lines. So yeah, as we come down to Avdivka, I'm going to concentrate on actually Pervomaisky. So you've seen I've changed my maps. I've tried to be a little bit more accurate here. Fighting around Opitny and Vodyane, obviously. And just to add, there's video footage to suggest that Ukrainian forces are hassling Opitny from the north. Is footage of them using RPGs to hassle Opigny, a bit of shoot and scoot. And that's so that's around the Opitny area, so it is still somewhat contested, even if controlled by the Russians. But it's actually Pervomaisky where I've taken back the Russian lines. This is broadly in line with both deep state, and also I want to show you what Andrew Perpetua has said. So so their other video today, so he's been looking at some sort of geolocated video. I had Russian area of control on the red dotted line. So he previously had it further forward. In fact, I had it even further forward than that. But their video, Russian video, shows fighting on the black X, advancing backwards again, he says, tongue in cheek. So that's to say that the Pervomaisky line is further back, and it also down near Novelsky as well, which is this tiny settlement with the fortifications in the earthen fortifications and whatnot, and trench lines. Has fighting geolocated further back there as well. So I have had a look at sort of my mapping and actually taken things further back in Pervomaisky, and even though there are these sort of tank attacks through when they're repelled, it could well be that the tank attacks are around here rather than actually fully into Pervomaisky. And it's just interesting that the Russians aren't as far advanced around there as I thought. I'm still not 100% sure where they are around Novelsky, but it could be that they're actually further back here. Okay, as we come down to Marinka, it's the same as it was. Not a lot of news there, just tough fighting still. As we move down to Pavlivka and Vuhledar, it's relatively quiet around here. The Russians have repelled Ukrainian attack towards Solodke and towards Novomayorsk here. So other than that, yeah, relatively quiet. But Vuhledar is under quite a lot of artillery bombardment at the moment. But yeah, not a lot else is happening. Lots of targets being hit in the Zaporizhia area. Lots of deaths and wounded reported, and lots of equipment losses, as I've told you over the last few days. Let's return to Kherson. So not a lot of news as far as actual attacks going on along the Zaporizhia front line. But in the Kherson front line, Kherson as a city itself is being attacked artillery being hit by artillery consistently, and fires break out there, and it's just not very pleasant at the moment. One bit of good news is that they managed to raise a flag on the left bank of the Dnipro, so that's good news for them. It's not really anything other than a sort of a morale boost, I guess. But this is at the same time in the same sort of area that Russia have taken out all the collaborators from temporarily occupied Oleshki, which is just across the river from the Kherson city. All the representatives of the occupation administration and police were taken out, together with them the families of the traitors were taken away on buses. And at the same time that the Ukrainians have raised a flag, and even with video footage. So if they're having the gall to do this, the audacity to do this, then you're thinking, right, okay, one day it's a flag with a bunch of boats going across uncontested and raising a flag on a big crane. The next day it's a bunch of troops. The next day it's this and that. And then you're thinking, okay, eventually they could actually force their way across the river and commit more troops to the left bank. I don't know. Who knows? But I think that's an interesting development nonetheless. So there you have it. Hopefully that was useful. That's the front line. Thank you for your support. Please like, subscribe, and share. And check out my extra video, which will be put up later on my other channel, youtube.com/@ATPGeo. Please go and subscribe over to that channel as well. In the meantime, thank you very much and take care.